child ever seen. It was true, too. She had a little thin face and a little thin body, thin light hair and a sour expression. Her hair was yellow and her face was yellow because she'd been born in India and had always been ill in one way or another. Her father had held a position under the English government and had always been busy and ill himself, and her mother had always been a great beauty who only to go to parties and amuse herself with gay people. She did not wanted a little girl at all, and when Mary was born, she handed her over to the care of Aya, who was made to understand that if she wished to please the Mizhabit, she must keep the child out of sight as much as possible. So when she was a sickly, fretful, ugly little baby, she was kept out of the way, and when she was a sickly, fretful, toddling thing, she was kept out of the way also. She never remembered seeing familiar anything but the dark faces of her aunt and the other native servants, as they always obeyed her and gave her her own way in everything, because the Mizhabit would be angry if she disturbed her by crying. By the time she was 6 years old, she was as tyrannical and as selfish a pig that ever lived. The young English governess, who came to teach her to read and write, disliked her so much that she gave up her place in 3 months, and when other governesses came to try to fill it, they always went away in a shorter time than the first one. So if Mary had not chosen really to want to know how to read books, she would never have learned her letters at all. One frightfully hot morning, when she was about 9 years old, she awakened feeling very cross, and she became crosser still when she saw that the servant who stood by her bedside was not Aya. "Why did you come?" she said to the strange woman. "I will not let you stay. Send my Aya to me." The woman looked frightened, but she only stammered that Aya could not come, and when Mary threw herself into a passion and beat and kicked her, she looked only more frightened and repeated that it was not possible for Aya to come to Missy Sahib. There was something mysterious in the air that morning. Nothing was done in its regular order, and several of the native servants seemed to be missing, while those whom Mary saw slunk or hurried behind with ashy and scarred faces. But no one would tell her anything, and her Aya did not come. She was eventually left alone as the morning went on, and at last wandered out into the garden and began to play by herself under a tree near the veranda. She pretended that she was making a flower bed, and that she stuck big scarlet hibiscus blossoms into little heaps in the earth, all the time growing more and more angry and muttering to herself the things she would say and the names she would call Sadi when she returned. "Pig, pig, daughter of pigs," she said, because to call a native a pig is the worst insult of all. She was grinding her teeth and saying this over and over again when she heard her mother come out on the veranda with someone. She was with a fair young man, and they stood talking together in low, strange voices. Mary knew the fair young man who looked like a boy. She had heard that he was a very young officer who had just come from England. The child stared at him, but she stared most at her mother. She always did this when she had a chance to see her, because the Mizhabit, Mary used to call her that oftener than anything else, was such a tall, slim, pretty person who wore such lovely clothes. Her hair was like silk, curly silk, and she had a delicate little nose, which seemed to be disdaining things, and she had large laughing eyes. All her clothes were thin and floating, and Mary said that they were full of lace. They looked fuller than lace ever that morning, but her eyes were not laughing at all. was 2 weeks ago. The Miss Habib wrung her hands. Oh, I know I ought, she cried. I only stayed to go to that silly dinner party. What a fool I was. At that very moment, such a loud sound of wailing broke out from the servants' quarters that she clutched the young man's arms, and Mary stood shivering from head to foot. The wailing grew louder and louder. What is it? What is it? Miss Lennox gasped. Someone has died, answered the boy officer. You did not say it had broken out amongst your serving. I did not know, the Mohammed cried. Come with me, come with me. And she turned and ran into the house. After that, appalling things happened, and the mysterious of the morning was explained to Mary. The cholera had broken out in its most fatal form, and people were dying like flies. The ayah had been taken ill in the night, and it is because she died the servants had wailed in the huts. Before the next day, 3 other servants were dead, and others had run away in terror. There was panic on every side, and dying people in all the bungalows. During the confusion and bewilderment of the second day, Mary hid herself in the nursery and was forgotten by everyone. Nobody thought of her, nobody wanted her, and strange things happened of which she knew nothing. Mary alternately cried and slept through hours. She only knew that people were ill, and she heard mysterious and frightening sounds. Once she crept into the dining room and found it empty, though a partly finished meal was on the table, and chairs and plates looked as if they had been hastily pushed back when the diners suddenly rose for some reason. The child ate some fruit and biscuits, and began thirsty. She drank a glass of wine which stood nearly filled. It was sweet, and she did not know how strong it was. Very soon it made her intensely drowsy, and she went back to her nursery and shut herself in again, frightened by the cries she had heard in the huts and the hurrying sound of feet. The wine made her so sleepy that she could scarcely keep her eyes open, and she lay down on her bed and knew nothing more for a long time. Many things happened during the hours in which she slept so heavily, but she was not disturbed by the wheels and the sound of things being carried in and out of the bungalow. When she awakened, she lay and stared at the wall. The house was perfectly still. She had never known it to be so silent before. She heard neither voices nor footsteps, and wondered if everyone had gotten well of the cholera and all the trouble was over. She wondered also who would take care of her now that Aya was dead. There would be a new Aya, and perhaps she would know some new stories. Mary had been rather tired of the old ones. She did not cry because her nurse had died. She was not an affectionate child, and she never cared much for anyone. The noise and the hurrying about and wailing of the cholera had frightened her, and she had been angry because no one had remembered that she was alive. Everyone was too panic-stricken to think of a little girl no one was fond of. When people had the cholera, it seemed that they remembered nothing but themselves. If everyone had gone well again, surely someone would remember and come to look for her. But no one came, and as she lay waiting, the house seemed to grow more and more silent. She heard something rustling on the matting, and when she looked down, she saw a little snake gliding along and watching her with eyes like jewels. She was not frightened, because he was a harmless little thing who would not hurt her, and he seemed to be in a hurry to get out of the room. He slipped onto the door as she watched him. How queer and quiet it is, she said. It sounds as if there was no one in the bungalow but me and the snake. Almost the next minute, she heard footsteps in the compound, and then on the veranda. There were men's footsteps, and the men entered the bungalow and talked in low voices. No one went to meet or speak to them, and they seemed to open doors and look into the room. What desolation, she heard one voice say. That pretty, pretty woman. she was beginning to feel hungry and disgracefully neglected. The first man who came in was a large officer she had once seen talking to her father. He looked tired and troubled, but when he saw her, he was so startled that he almost jumped back. "Barney," he cried out, "there is a child here, a child alone, in a place like this. Mercy on us, who is she?" "I am Mary Lennox," the little girl said, drawing herself up stiffly. She thought the man was very rude to call her father's bungalow a place like this. "I fell asleep when everyone had the cholera, and I only awakened up. Why did no one come?" "It is a child no one ever saw," exclaimed the man, turning to his companions. "She is actually being forgotten." "Why was I forgotten?" Mary said, stamping her foot. "Why did nobody come?" The young man, whose name was Barney, looked at her very sadly. Mary even thought she saw him wink his eyes as if to wink tears away. "Poor little kid," he said. "There was no one left to come." It was in that strange and sudden